We're always hearing about GDP, right? It's the big number, the economic report card for the whole country. But what happens when the way you measure that number, the ruler itself, completely changes? Well, that's exactly what we're going to dig into today. We're unpacking the incredible story of how India, back in 2015, gave its economy a total measurement makeover. And trust me, this wasn't just a minor tweak. It was a seismic shift that basically redrew the nation's entire economic map. Okay, so here's our game plan. We'll start with why the old system just wasn't cutting it anymore. Then we'll get into the massive upgrades to both the methods and the data. And finally, we'll see what this brand new picture of the economy actually looked like. All right, so first up, let's talk about the problem. By 2015, trying to measure India's fast-moving, modernizing economy with the old tools, well, it was like trying to capture a high-definition video with a foggy old camera. The picture was getting blurrier and more out of focus every single day. Now, to be clear, changing the base year for economic numbers is totally normal. Countries do it all the time to keep their statistics relevant, kind of like updating the operating system on your phone. And as you can see, India's done this regularly for decades. But this time was really different. For one, the old base year, 2004-2005, was ancient by modern economic standards. And the most logical next step, 2009-10, was a no-go. Why? Because the '08 global financial crisis made it a totally abnormal year. You can't build a new foundation on shaky ground. They needed a clean slate. So if your ruler is broken, what do you do? Well, India's solution was way bigger than just picking a new starting point. It was about adopting an entirely new, globally accepted rulebook for how you even measure an economy in the first place. The huge change was getting in line with this global standard called the System of National Accounts, or SNA 2008. This was a big deal. It meant that India's economic numbers would finally be speaking the same language as most other major economies around the world. And this new rulebook brought a really interesting shift in focus. We moved from just talking about GDP to something called Gross Value Added, or GVA. Think of it like this. GVA measures the price of a car right as it rolls off the assembly line at the factory gate before things like sales tax get tacked on. It gives you a much cleaner look at how much value a specific industry is actually creating. But hey, new rules are one thing. They don't mean much if you're still working with old, patchy data. And the change that happened here, honestly, it was nothing short of a revolution, especially for how India's huge corporate sector was measured. I really want this to sink in, because the jump in scale here is just massive. This wasn't just an update. It was a whole new ballgame. You see, the old method was based on a small sample survey of companies. But the new way, it plugged directly into the Ministry of Corporate Affairs MCA 21 database, a literal digital goldmine of financial filings from pretty much every single formal company in the country. So the old method? It used a sample of about 2,500 companies. Just a tiny snapshot that was supposed to represent the entire corporate universe. And the new database? We're talking about 500,000 companies. Yeah, 500,000. That's a 200-fold increase. It gave statisticians, for the first time ever, a near-complete census of corporate India. And this wasn't just about getting more data. It was about getting smarter about what that data means. The new system came up with some really clever ways to measure the value of sectors that are, notoriously difficult to track. A perfect example of this is something called the effective labor input method. Before, the assumption was that every worker's hour was equal. But think about it. Is an hour of a seasoned business owner's time really worth the same as an hour from a part-time helper? The new method said no way and gave different weights to different roles, painting a much more realistic picture. And look at the surprising results in the financial services sector. This wasn't just about making all the numbers look bigger. The value of the central bank and insurance sectors was actually revised down pretty significantly. But then you see unorganized finance? It skyrocketed by almost 150%. It showed a huge part of the economy that we were seriously underestimating before. Okay, so you change the rules, you revolutionize the data, you get smarter about how you measure things. So what's the bottom line?
What did this new, high-resolution portrait of the Indian economy actually look like?
Well, to put it simply, the new picture revealed an economy that was more resilient, more robust, and growing a heck of a lot faster than anybody thought. I mean, just look at the headline growth rate here. For the 2013-14 fiscal year, the old number we all saw was 5%. The new, more accurate number, almost 7%. That's not just a minor correction. It tells a completely different story about the country's economic momentum at the time. And the very structure of the economy seemed to shift right before our eyes. Suddenly, manufacturing's share of the pie jumped by over 28%, all thanks to that new corporate data. At the exact same time, the trade and hotel sector was revised down by over 37%. This just proves it wasn't about making everything bigger. It was about getting the proportions right. In fact, India's own Central Statistics Office put out a warning saying the old and new numbers are not strictly comparable. And that makes total sense, right? It's like trying to compare a quick black and white sketch to a full-color, high-definition photograph. They're just two fundamentally different things. So in the end, this whole 2015 makeover was so much more than just a boring statistical update. It fundamentally changed how India's economic reality was understood, and it really proves that these big economic numbers we all rely on, they aren't fixed truths set in stone. They're constantly evolving estimates. Which leaves us with a really important question. What parts of our incredibly complex economy might we still be undermeasuring today? Thanks for joining us on The Explainer.